We have Grace with a workshop. Grace, I'm pretty sure everyone knows
Well,
who
like
you
you
are.
said, how to filter the signal from the noise. That's exactly the workshop.
Oh, awesome. I'm pretty sure everyone knows who you are, but do you mind just giving a little introduction before you get started?
Oh, I don't mind. Hi, I ask uncomfortable questions. I've been in the DAO space for quite a while now. I've recently actually written just a lot of specifications for different DAOs. So I guess that's what I've been doing lately is being hired by organizations that want to do DAOs to help them write their specifications. Um, and this topic is called How to Prevent People from Lying to You. I'm pretty well known in the industry for perhaps being a little bit honest to a fault. Perhaps lying would be something that I could engage with a little bit more, or just at least being nice. But yeah, that's what we're going to talk about is how do you identify when people are exactly what I would say, like, how do you know? People are like, oh, great idea. Is it? Are they being nice? So yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about today. Or actually not talk about it, I'm going to have you talk about it. Hopefully people will be participatory because it'll be more fun if you participate. I'm not a big fan of sage on stage. I actually do things in workshop style. So that's the intention today. How does that sound to people? Can you emoji me or something that sounds cool? Also really happy if people want to show themselves instead of me feeling weird here. Okay, at least a couple of thumbs ups is great. Yeah, it was great to talk to me. It was good to talk to me in the past. I don't know that sounds like a backhanded insult. It was good in the past. We'll see how it's like. I'm sorry, I gotta go. So far so good. Good while you're ahead. Great. So how do we? Let's start with part one. Any of you ever said something that was good, like your friend came to you with their Web3 idea or whatever, and you're like, hey, that's great, but you didn't mean it? Or even your boss or somebody said, what do you think of this? Or your mom, how is the food? Do I look fat in this dress? Whatever it is. It's all the time. Great. So maybe just think or write down for yourself 2 or 3 reasons why. And we're going to do a little thumbs up vote. People are going to say a reason that they didn't tell the truth in a situation. They don't have to tell us a situation or anything. And you can thumbs up if you have, not if you've done that, but if you've ever been that person, right? So it's like if you say, like, the reason I say that it's a great idea when it isn't, or a good idea when it isn't, let's collaborate, let's have lunch, right? If so, the thing is, this is how it works, right? One of you will say or text, I'd rather people speak, really, why you didn't tell somebody the truth. And then if you say, for example, because they get angry easily. And then anybody who gets angry easily says thumbs up, right? Like, not that you withheld information, but that you've actually done that thing that would prevent somebody from speaking to you honestly. Does that make sense? Is that clear? So who's going to be somebody who tells me a reason? Well, we'll start with that one. Because they get angry when I disagree with them. So who has ever been angry because somebody disagreed? You can thumbs up, or who has ever done that? The only one who's gotten angry? Okay, good. Some of us get angry when people disagree with us. So we know there's a certain, like, there's some people who are going to lie to us about that. Who, me? Never, right? So I'm not angry. Oh, they get depressed, right? So whoever, so 60 says sometimes they get sad. So who's ever gotten sad when, like, somebody tells them something they don't like or their idea sucks? And visibly so that the other person would know that they shouldn't have said that. Thumbs ups here? Okay, so let's see. Yeah, okay. All right. What other reasons do people have as saying something's great or good or lying in some way about it that they've done? Like that they know why did you do that? Why didn't you tell somebody the truth? Either type or say. Why didn't you tell the truth in a particular situation? This is going to be a really boring workshop. You didn't understand them and you didn't want to, they weren't ready. So you didn't understand them. And so in order to just brush them off. So how many of you know that you
No, I didn't understand the prompt, the what you said.
at the beginning I said, have you ever said something was good? Oh, it's hard to hear me. All right, change microphone, change microphone. You didn't understand me. Good. I'm glad that you guys are interacting. Or can you hear me better now? This thing.
But now you're muted.
You hear me better now?
Oh, yes,
I
yes,
hear
yes.
you better. Okay, good. So
Great.
you've been in a situation where you said something nice when you really didn't think the idea was good. And why did you do that? The question is, why did you do that? Somebody wrote they weren't ready. Okay, so how many of you have known that you weren't really ready to get feedback? And so you said something in a way that would, make sure that nobody would give you direct feedback. Who's ever done that, been like, I kind of indicated, yeah, I'm not ready. Yeah,
Yeah,
I did.
it has happened to me that sometimes I have given feedback and then the person has replied like, "Hey, I'm not asking for feedback." And I was like, "Oh, okay, so good, you're doing good." And that's it.
It's great. It's great. You don't want to hear real feedback. Yeah, they actually asked you to lie. How many of you have ever asked somebody to lie in that way? Just like, don't tell me, just make me feel good, or either with your body language or your even explicitly, like, I'm not ready for feedback. I want to run this by you, but don't be too harsh on me. Who's ever done that? None of you have ever done that. No, some of you have done that. Okay, cool. Pete says he didn't want to kill the person's buzz. Like, the person was so excited about it, he didn't want to get them, like, he didn't want to. I think I'm probably guilty of that one more than any other one. Like, I didn't want to put, like, crush their enthusiasm. Who's done that? Oh, who's also been so enthusiastic? How about who's been so enthusiastic when they explain it that the other person's never going to tell you anything bad? Like, you just told it in the most exciting way just to make sure. Who's ever done that? Oh, 60's raising their hand. Go ahead.
Uh, uh, I hope you can hear me.
I hear you great.
Okay, nice. I don't wanna like sidetrack the conversation. But I was just gonna say that I wouldn't say raised or like I've been around this mentality that you can do anything you put your mind to. So, sometimes if someone is like, yeah, as Pete said, you don't want to kill their buzz, like sometimes you might lie to them, might, just make them feel good about the idea just so they can keep going, because yeah, the whole you can do anything you put your mind to, right? And I'm the same sometimes. Like, I'll tell you an idea and I don't care if you don't like it. I don't care if you think it's a bad idea. I can do it. So yeah, just to get it out of the way that I do that to people, and I, sort of don't. It's not. I like constructive feedback because where would we be without that? But yeah, just that whole mentality that, yeah, you can do anything you put your mind to is sort of the reason why I give people, why I give people sort of positive affirmations, even when I don't think the idea is great, and why I also want positive affirmations when my idea might not be that great.
Good. Yeah, I once married somebody that everybody liked, and they couldn't believe that somebody so nice would date somebody like me. But it only one person in my life basically said to me, "I don't think you're really in love with this guy. Anyway, I'm not married anymore." Um, so, but yeah, that's a really sticky one, right? It's like people are going to tell you that they don't like your fiance or that you're not really happy with the boyfriend you're with, right? Like, when is that fine line that you and in my house growing up, actually, that was one of we had a couple of rules about what you couldn't say. And one of them was, I called it, you can't rain on other people's parade. Like if somebody says, I want to play in the NBA, you can't say, but you're short, right? Like you have to just encourage people. And so there's definitely a fine line between giving people correct feedback and and um, and quashing their dreams, right? So we have to work with that. But we can all see that there are ways in which people present things to us that already prevent us from telling the truth. And we know that there's ways that we prevent people from telling the truth to us. And so the first thing is to start like identifying with yourself. What are the things I do? And like 60 said it, he's like, look, I'm going to do whatever I want. I make it clear to people that they might as well not critique me. But I'm sure that you also have moments where you're like, I'd like some feedback. And so, placing people, that's the first way to know, like to prevent people from lying to you, right? Is to be somebody that people don't have to lie to. I have a cookie story. Elizabeth is eating it. It reminds me of this cookie story. Like I have a friend of mine, and she's like, I had these Girl Scout cookies, and I found them the whole box, like half of the box my son ate, and I was like, did you eat those cookies? And he lied to me. And I was like, well, like what was he going to do? Tell you the truth at that point? Like he didn't have a choice. You forced him to lie to you. And so there's a lot of ways to force people to lie. So, that's the first part of the workshop today. So the next part of the workshop, to know whether people are telling you the truth or not, is supposedly all of you are working on projects, or there's something, your DAOs. And I want you to think of a couple. Now we've just already gone that, like when you've lied, right? What are I'm just going to give a minute for people to think of a project that people have told them about, that they know that there's a shortcoming in that project. And it's really interesting, right? Like I constantly say that we people in Web3, we're constantly, you people actually, I write a lot of white papers for people, like these guys haven't even thought about who their users are. And I wrote a huge specification recently for a client. And then I started to interview people about what they would do with this thing that I've written a specification for. Thank God I haven't built it yet. I started interviewing groups of groups. It's a system for groups of groups. And I got to tell you, I've interviewed like 30 people so far. I don't think there's a use case for it. And I'm constantly criticizing all of you guys in the industry for this. Like these guys, they don't do any user studies, whatever. I mean, I've written like a 40-page specification, done all this research, talked about it, tried to figure out this problem that we've got with reputation in Web3. And it turns out the thing that I specified, like so far I haven't found anybody who really needs it. And people really like the idea, but I haven't found anybody who really needs it. So this thing that I've been critiquing about a lot, I did it myself. So that's this next exercise. Like, what are some things, and please people speak up. It would be much more interesting for people to be vulnerable about their own things. Do you know that you've critiqued people for their project, either out loud or in your heart, that you can see I might be doing that same thing? That I'm critiquing people, like, because the world mirrors you. Like there's sort of a philosophy about that. Anybody have any ideas about their own projects that they're like, oh, this thing I critique people about, I'm doing it? I'm assuming that Elizabeth is nodding to somebody in the room, not to me. Timed says they have something. Do you want to tell us a story, Timed? We'd love to hear it. Oh, go ahead. Come on, tell us. Who wants to contribute to the thing and tell us a story about at least one of the things that they know is a pitfall? It'll help all the people in the room who are doing the same pitfall. Oh. My workshop is starting to fail, having a community. Kara, go ahead. Yay.
Oh, hey. Okay, I'll just speak to what I just typed. Just for me, and I see so many of us at Web3, we're creative, creators, driven, entrepreneurs. And so, of course, we can get really into lots of ideas, and there's so many opportunities, things to grow and do. And I notice people seem to have a hard time focusing. And then I notice I'm doing the exact same thing. And, and then when people give me feedback on that, like, you need to focus, I get internally sometimes offended because I'm like, well, but how do you know? Because I'm the one that knows what I'm trying to build. You don't really understand exactly what I'm doing here, And so then I realized, well, I can't say the same thing to other people. So it's just it catches me a lot.
Well, at least at least one person says it's the story of their life. If it's the story of Pete's life, definitely good. Yeah, timed also has a problem. It's true. We're kind of an understaffed industry, and everything is like a little bit speculative. Am I going to get paid for this and that? And so I'm doing 8 things at once. It's totally a pitfall we all fall into. Go ahead, Nick. Let's hear your story. Ooh, you're still either muted or whatever. I called Nick, but I don't hear Nick. Oh, there we go. Unmuted. It's unmuted. But I still am not hearing. I heard for a second and then it went off. I'm not hearing Nick. Maybe Nick's having a microphone problem because he looks unmuted. Now he looks muted. I definitely don't hear Nick muted. But when he was unmuted, I didn't hear him either. Bleep, bleep, bleep. Huddle misbehavior. It's huddle misbehavior if you have an exotic setup. I'm on Linux. Yeah, the mirror effect, yeah. Cool.
I'll say real quick, I
Sure.
see small businesses in my neighborhood open and close, like revolving door of small businesses. And I'm like, why would they have not figured out a better business plan ahead of time? Like, why didn't they do the research on figuring out the cost, effective cost benefit analysis of like this location or that or whatever? And I see in the Web3 space a lot of like very similar things with people sort of just jumping into something and not doing that same like thorough pre-work to make sure you have market fit, to make sure that you have a viable revenue model. And part of that's because it's a new industry and we don't have a lot of these things worked out yet. And part of it is people, like being encouraged to just build, which I philosophically struggle sometimes to agree with. If you're not building in a sustainable way, are you just contributing like a basically future waste? So I think like some more introspection and like really clear analysis of what you're trying to solve and why, that we see in like the in real life, like mortar and brick businesses, but then we also are seeing in the startup world in Web3. And it's something that with the projects I'm involved in, I have to take a step back and say, like, is this really, A, is it sustainable? B, is it like valuable? Is it a value add? Just because it's fun or interesting doesn't mean it's necessarily a value add. And it goes to your point, Grace, earlier about like the hard conversation, which takes like maturity and it takes a willingness to be, to not put your value on the thing that you create as opposed to like the process itself is valuable. So that's kind of how what all these thoughts made me think of.
It's interesting. I kind of disagree a little bit about product market fit in the Web3 space, simply because we're in the space of a magic money printing machine. And if you've printed yourself $1 million or whatever, I mean, I actually advised a company at one point, and they had not put out their beta system and whatever. They had me come in as the operations manager for a few months, and within those 3 months, they reincorporated a new jurisdiction, and they put out a beta thing, and they put out an annual plan, and then they fired me because what they could see was, if they kind of muddled along and paid their staff, and they had just moved into a fancy building, they had raised enough money in whatever it was, 2017, that they could pay their staff and be the CEO and drive their BMW for another 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years on the money that they had in Ethereum, and never produce a product. But if they started really producing a product, they'd have to, have customer service. They'd have to see if the product really worked in the network. They'd have to do all kinds of things that really, if you've got $15 million in the bank, like, why bother? Why don't I just ride my BMW, pay all my staff, and develop some fun stuff that we like? So I know that's a controversial take, but I don't see anything wrong with that, honestly. I mean, we live in a world where, many jobs are just bullshit jobs. If you're doing something fun and exciting, and whether it's public goods or not public goods, if you've raised money for it and you can afford to do something without product market fit, I think it's fine. I think almost everything that we're developing in Web3 doesn't have product market fit. So I don't know what kind of DAOs people are talking about right now, but at this point, there is something like, how are you going to get, right, investors not to lie to you? I think the biggest thing that we're dealing with in terms of lying when we're talking about a lot of these things is, like, when I came into this industry, somebody said to me, you can write a white paper and raise like $30 million. And it sounded really implausible, but all of the facts checked out. It's very hard, though, right? And you see a lot of people coming into this and being like, you just write a white paper, you find a platform for it, you create a DAO, and exactly, and like, it's like, where would there be, who's going to actually pay for it? Like, who's going to actually buy your token? So at this point, there's a huge, there's like, I think somebody said there was 1,000 meme coins a day being put out on Solana, just on Solana alone. I was like, wow, that's a lot of meme coins, right? And probably of those 1,000, only 2 of them actually raise money. But if you're one of those 2, go for it. Something like that. So I'm just looking. Ecosystem level strategy, interconnecting orgs, traders, and DAOs. Yeah. Oh, Nick wants to say something now.
Can try again. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
yes.
Okay, sweet. So for me, I'm trying to build a product for like local communities for endurance sports, and I was doing some programs like this that are more like technical, decentralized, and everything, and trying to use terminology for like a local business workshop, and talking to people there is like, what the hell are you talking about? So like I got that a few times, and even in this space, like talking in more general terms and then getting feedback on like, okay, how can you make it more approachable to the average person, like make it so that they can understand. And like that's where like doing a lot of the in-person stuff, or like in the US we have the SBDC, which kind of helps you with writing business plans and stuff like that. Like doing that stuff is important to help you like understand the aspects that you're talking about, of like making sure you have like an actual business model, and you can like approach the customers that you want to build it for and get actual feedback, so that you can make something that's going to be useful than just building something that seems like it should be fun.
And in your case, right? In your case, if you're pre-money, right, you've got to figure out, how am I going to get money if I haven't raised, wild internet money? So you said that this is for endurance sports. So, like, what is the problem you're trying to solve?
So for me, it's just driving engagement and kind of like the gamification of participation. So assigning some amount of value for the actions that people participate, and then kind of automating the like marketing engagement process for like showcasing for people that contribute, and because you have applications that exist already that give you digital badges, but then you can do it with like NFTs under the hood, since like the average person is not going to care about that. And then I think I've seen a project here where, like, let's say you have your community get up to like collectively get up to like a certain mileage or whatever, then you can mint an NFT of that and sell it on one of the marketplaces and potentially continue getting funding for your space that way. So it's just like kind of taking pieces of ideas from here and merging it into the real world to drive engagement and provide, be able to make money and provide value for your community.
Cool. So the problem, one of the problems that you said is you could potentially get money for your sport, right? Like you
hmm
kind of threw that in there. And then you talked about driving engagement, but I'm not clear who you're engaging.
The community itself. So like, let's say the board, there's a transition of the board that helps manage it right now, so there's a lot of turnover. We need to like create all these like programs to keep people engaged coming back to join in person, do workouts on their own. So it's coming up with programs to keep people participating and stay motivated. So like if you have like a leaderboard of people's workouts getting like aggregated and processed, and it shows like where people can, what people can achieve when they put the effort in, and it makes like a little bit of a competition between the people that are there. It's like, oh, okay, they did like just a little bit more than me, I can do more this time, or if I show up like 3 more times, then I'm going to get credit for that, and it'll like put me higher on the leaderboard. So it just kind of like gamifies participation and encourages people to show up more.
I think it's pretty, I mean, it's interesting that you're trying to gamify something that already is a game.
Sure.
Um,
But it's
I mean,
adding
people
more of
on,
like,
you know, endurance sports is a really big deal. Like these are
hmm
incredibly busy people.
sure.
If right, and so adding overhead is very difficult, and that's exactly what the problem you're facing. You're saying like, look,
Mhm.
people don't want to serve on the committee because you know they're busy. Like when I was training for a marathon at one point, I stopped. I was trying. I don't remember if it was a marathon or a triathlon. I was young, and I was like, you know, when I finish training, I'll be able to wear high heels again because like my ankles wouldn't hold up. You know, I was like, and when I finish training, maybe I'll be able to date guys again. And when I finish training, I'll be able to, you know, like it was like the list got longer and longer of things that I would be able to do.
hmm
So the problem that you're facing is people who do endurance sports are super, super busy and super, super dedicated to their sport.
Right.
Now they're like, and so they don't want to volunteer on another committee. And I'm not sure that technology will solve that, but
Right. So the volunteering part is not the problem. We have got like a full board and everything. It's the turnout for the membership and keeping people coming back, and just even on their own doing like the workouts too. So it's more about like keeping people involved, bringing people in. So it's just kind of building a self-managing system, and I think a lot of the DAO
mm,
tooling can help with that, and like a somewhat of a automated marketing and engagement process. Like, you know, like you build a program to drive engagement around events, like weekly meetups, or you have programs for like training for people to hit. So if you gamify that to some extent and maybe have some like accountability with a partner or a group or something, it's just different. It's kind of like a network effect of a bunch of little things that can keep the community active and working together.
yeah. I mean, there've been a lot of apps that have tried that. I mean, you know, there's definitely a lot of research to do, and there's definitely a lot of organizations trying to do that. And it may be that there's some Web3 tools that can help you more than, you know, like whatever I don't use those apps, but like I know
Sure.
that there are apps like that. So there's definitely a lot of market research to see like what would be the difference between what you can provide in Web3 versus all the apps that exist today.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure that there is something like, unless you really did, because again, engaging people, this is like what we were talking about before, like how do you get people to engage in your NFT marketplace and actually put money into that? This is a lot harder problem than people, like that's the biggest place where people lie to you, right? Like this is about
Right.
people lying to you. Like in the Web3 space, people say all these big words that make it sound like you're going to do this NFT drop and everybody's going to buy your NFTs, and like, I don't know, I wouldn't be working for a living if it was that
No,
easy, right?
I agree with
Yeah.
you.
Like that's the biggest place people lie to you, is like how easy it's going to be when you can make magic internet money printing.
Well, I think that's where I wanted to keep it more Web 2 oriented, since I've tried a couple things of like getting people on Discord and stuff like that. And a lot of the groups are a bit older and have no interest in learning a new technology and that stuff. So I figured it's more like keep people where they're at, like they're in Facebook and Instagram channels for the community account. So it's like stay with those and build aspects that kind of rely on those and minimize the like the Web3 components, and anything that's going to be there is for the most part not going to emphasize it for like the main community. But then if there's marketing that happens on like Lens or Farcaster, then you have to figure out how to specifically emphasize those components. So it's like addressing the specific market that you're going to be a part of.
I mean, that makes sense, right? Like, yeah, who are the people and what are they using right now? And yep, it's yeah. So
I
yeah,
appreciate the feedback.
I do want to talk about this ecosystem thing that they've been talking about in the chat. But I want to kind of, what you said just segues into the next thing, which I think you guys covered in the previous talk, so I don't want to go too deep into it, which is there's a few ways of knowing if people, like, what does it mean when people are being nice to you, and the levels at which people will engage with you when you're telling them your idea. And one would be like, they're telling you it's a good idea in some way, or they're kind of like, what I did is like I said, I'm not sure that Web3 has anything to offer your app, right? Which is my way of saying, I don't want to rain anybody's parade, but I can't see how you would get these people to do that, right? Which doesn't mean that it's a bad idea. It just means I can't see it. So that's one way to know that people are, being nice. And then there's people who are like, that's a great idea. Go for it, right? That means nothing. Then there's people like, when can I try it? I'd like to try it, or I can see how that would be useful. Now, if people are like, I'd like to try it, sometimes they'll just say, oh yeah, I could see how our project would, and you'll see this with like larger projects. You might be like, I want to build on your network, or I want to integrate with your blockchain, or I want to integrate with your project. You might be trying to get money from somebody, or money or participation from some organization that you want to partner with. And then they'll be like, yeah, we'd be glad to partner with you, be in touch with me or a partners person or whatever it is. But if they're really interested, they'll ask technical questions, right? Like, is it an EVM compatible? Is it this and that? How would I interface with it? What does integration look like? That's how you know they're actually saying it's a good idea to partner with them, is they start asking you questions. So that's level number 2, like they would actually be willing to try it, is they're asking you questions that you can tell are technical questions that have to do with their network. Now, they might do that to be polite. I do that sometimes to be polite too, hoping that the person will realize that they can't help me and that they'll go away. But at least you'll have some like understanding of how relevant you are to that person, because if they're like, oh, well, I can't use it if it's not on the Cardano network, then at least that's a no in some way, without letting you down, right? And then the third thing is they really want it, and that's when they say, when can I have one? Can I have one now? Or how much does it cost? In a way that makes you clear that they're about to buy it from you. And so those are the kinds of, if somebody's like, when will it be ready? You know that you actually have a market. So those are kind of the 3 levels here. Does that speak to anybody? Does anybody have any comments on those like different levels of saying, oh, good idea versus technical questions versus when can I get one? Okay, good. I might have another part here.
So just really quick to that, and it's like in meeting with somebody and it doesn't seem like I can use their product, or I don't understand why it would work for me, if I do think somebody else would, I'm also happy to like recommend somebody else. Um, or if the company that I'm pitching to isn't feeling my thing, I will ask, is there anyone that you know would recommend I speak to instead? That's another way of sort of pivoting, so you don't feel like you've wasted their time or they've wasted your time, without being like too mean, and then kind of moving on from that.
Yep. Yeah. If they say, can I, you know, if they refer you to somebody, oh, you've got to speak to this person, that means that this person is either, you know, and because it does risk something to introduce you. Like I'm not going to introduce you if you're whatever. I had somebody I spoke to recently and they were asking me about community currencies. I said, listen, I'll be happy to introduce you to some of the top people, but I got to understand what you're doing first. And after speaking to them for 20 minutes, I was like, you're not ready to, like, I can't introduce you. I don't want to ruin my reputation by introducing you. So if somebody's willing to introduce you, by the way, Kara, you never put your hand down. I'm assuming from the last time.
Oh, I did, but then I just raised it again.
Oh, you raised it again? Oh, do you want to speak? Great.
Yes, please. So to your question, I'm kind of looping in what one of the things he commented on that was very helpful is we're talking about like ecosystemic sort of validation. And he suggested that about like seeing if people could sell 100 NFTs for a DAO, for example, or a DAO idea to validate whether it's potentially something people would be interested in. And this is just one use case that, I mean, I think that's really a great idea. And it ties into our use case because what we're doing is trying to unify the women in Web3 communities in the ecosystem. We have our own community, but we see we're operating a lot in silos. So we built this database about 250 to 300 that exists. There's many of us. It's very funny, actually, because I hear a lot of people say to us, oh, have you heard of World of Women? And I was like, yeah, definitely. That's one community out of like 300 that exists, you know? So I realized a lot of men, especially, don't even think there's many communities, but a lot of us women realize there's so many. And so, anyway, we're going to be starting to introduce soon this unified space for us all. And it's kind of interesting because in the early conversations, things are coming up for people in some ways about, you know, how are we different, or we don't want to have competition, and it's like, yeah, well, everyone kind of has their own unique space here, but I think it's going to be, to your points, Grace, just about this validation. I think one of the ideas here about seeing how they can validate certain aspects of their business with an NFT collection or something like that could be very useful.
So an NFT collection is very much a fashion item. And so if you're talking about unifying people across the, like we want to unify half of the human population or something like that, right? Like people who are women. And there's justification for unifying women in the Web3 space because we are such a minority here, right? Like there's something around that. But there also has to be something more than that. Like it's not quite right? An NFT collection is, like I said, it's very much a fashion item, and a lot of the women's spaces are quite, not necessarily overtly, but quite clearly fashion statements more than something else. And a lot of the women's spaces in the Web3 are much more interested in consumers and, you know, I mean, I'm calling them fashion statement. I don't mean that as something degrading. Obviously, I'm not much of a fashion statement myself, but that's part of my own style, right? Like I have a particular style, you know, grumpy old lady style, whatever you want to call that. But just, you know, like there aren't that many grumpy old ladies in Web3, even in the women's spaces. But, you know, so yeah, there's reasons why there aren't so many women in Web3, which I could go into probably in another space. But it has to do with like not just the culture of the industry as a whole, but the values of the industry as a whole. Like, for example, transparency is not a female value. It's a masculine value because women are smaller. Just biologically, women are smaller, so they tend to be more secretive and less transparent. It's just biological reality. And I'm a very transparent person, right? Like, I'm not saying you can't be both, right? But I am saying that there's certain values that women have that make it very difficult to fit in the value system that Web3 represents. And that's why you find much more in the consumer and the fashion and the whatever. And so unifying all those different fashion statements, I don't know. How does that work out? Like, is that something that is a desire of women? I don't know. Right? Like, so women do like to get together. I mean, I love joining all the women's groups in Web3. I just love being, because I like to feel a sense of belonging. I don't want to rage quit. I want to belong, right? Yeah, so I
Yeah,
love
that's the
the idea.
purpose of our DAO is actually, I mean, it's very early stages, but we found this platform called Common Ground. I think I've mentioned it in this group a couple times because I love it so far. It's really a place to find common ground, and that we want to see if the community leaders from these 200, 300 organizations want to unify. And that we'll have to explore the purposes of doing so. I mean, we haven't just said let's unify. We have strategies. We have examples of ways we can co-create partnerships. We're building a partnership CRM. So like there's actual tangible value there, but it is very early stages. And anytime anyone goes into unification, it brings up stuff, because we're not trained to really operate yet as without unify. What are you hiding? Yeah, like how does everybody have their own space at the same time work more collaboratively? That's the purpose.
I would highly recommend reading Emergent Strategy, which talks a lot about if you're not being useful, you're decomposing into your base nutrients. And then if you are being useful, you're helping to support rooted systems. And it's a very different way of thinking about organizing and like the value any individual contributor can have, which like goes beyond it takes us into a growth, like an actual growth mindset, and the fact that failure isn't failure, right? Because then you're feeding back into the ecosystem, right, for a new iteration, which is us along the same sustainability lines. And I will say, like, we are put in more pressure in like direct competition as women, because there's fewer of us. And one way to counter that is for anyone with hiring power as a man to bring more women in intentionally. Like really clear hiring practices that support diversity in a myriad of ways, but principally, given that it's the most obvious way, like gender balance. And I do think women helping women to find jobs in the space is one of the ways that participating in the various female spaces is useful. And then like, investment strategies also talking about like being more secretive. Like a lot of women in the space want to figure out how to make Web3 work for them to support themselves. And that's a theme I see in lots of these spaces. A little bit off track, so I apologize. But Kara, thanks for sharing. I do think more community spaces in general, like green spaces, plazas, right, in Europe, like there are community spaces, right, and it forms a sense of identity, and we need to also be cognizant of creating those community spaces in the digital sphere, the metaverse also.
And one of the things also, like talking about women's spaces and secretive spaces and that kind of thing, is like we're, as an ecosystem, we're not doing a good job in enforcing like exposure of bad behavior. And so in women's circles, we'll be like, who's a little grabby, right? But we would never say it out loud because the implications for our career would be really bad. So, I'm not talking about like being secretive in some like, but there are people in the Web3 space who really are not comfortable for people who are smaller physically, or people who are weaker intellectually, or people who are physically weaker, or any of that. And some of us, and so there's certain groups in which that information is transmitted in a non-transparent way. Is that good or bad? I don't know, but there are places like that. the women's spaces are often very welcoming for like, how do I deal with those situations? You know, so and so did this. What do I do? I can't call them out. They're the, you know, they're a podcaster or they're a funder or they're whatever. And so women's spaces have traditionally been places to discuss those types of issues behind closed doors. So 60 has his hand raised. Go ahead. Or their hand raised. 60 is a bear.
And sorry if I take the conversation a bit off track.
That'd be great. This track isn't the healthiest track.
But you said something around like as men we don't notice that there are quite a lot of women communities, or a lot of women are participating in Web3. And I had call it an epiphany recently. Because I'm part of a project, we apply for grants. I've also, helped other people go through the grant process. I also know, just a lot of people who are sort of building and so forth. And in one of the grant fellowship calls that we had with other grant recipients, in the round that we participated in, it was just guys, and then it made me realize, yeah, it's so hard to come across like a female builder in Web3, and you know, in Web2 I've come across a number of examples of female builders, but in Web3, it's still like, if there's a reason guys don't notice that we actually have like a lot of women in this space, I feel like sort of like the lack of female builders might be one of the reasons. Because if you've seen like with the cult around like guys like Sam Bankman-Fried, all these CZ, like all these influential crypto figures, like a lot of guys sort of gravitate and drool over like all these male founders, and we haven't had that yet for just to wrap it up, it's not set in stone yet, but at Push DAO, we plan on having eventually like a grant round for female builders, like where we'll literally close it off. We just want women in Web3 to sort of apply for grants for anything they're building, sort of like give them a platform. Because as you said, like it might, I'm not a woman, so I don't know, but it feels competitive for you guys, so let's make it even, like, let's sort of reduce the barrier of competition even more, and give you guys the spotlight. So hopefully stuff like that helps give more women the confidence to like come out and say like, yo, I also have an idea, I also have something I want to build, and I don't want to compete you know uh, on an unfair ground where people will sort of instead of judging my project for what it is, they'll be like more like shocked that, oh, it's a female founder, so yeah. Sorry for going off on a
Great.
tangent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it's about unfairness. I mean, I think it's about it may be about the appeal of the industry as a whole, you know, but I don't know. So I want to talk a little bit more about this issue that you guys came up with in just a few minutes, but like you guys were talking um, about ecosystem and creating these list of work, and I'm not sure that we have a good definition of, and this goes to what Kara's saying, like I'm not sure we have a good definition of what we mean by ecosystem. Like what does that even mean? And certainly when I go between chains, I'm going to call it chains, people don't know that people aren't very cross-chain. Like I'm chain agnostic, and I know quite a lot of people in the Cardano network, and I know people in the Ethereum network, and I know some people in the Cosmos network, fewer in the Cosmos network. And then there's the whole Solana network. That's a whole different network, right? And each one of these ecosystems feels like a different ecosystem. And the DAO ecosystem, there's kind of like, and when you go to any of these conferences, some of them are the people who are just shill, like somebody was saying in the chat. And some of the people are, about the token price, and other people are about public goods. I'm not sure that we even know what the ecosystem is. And so when we talk about like creating a network across the ecosystem, like I'm a little bit I'm interested in what you guys are thinking, actually, that means. Like any of the people who talked about that in the chat, like what does that even mean to you guys?
Pat shared what in the chat what he's building. Maybe he could share. I could also share. But I think you guys heard. We see an ecosystem like women's groups, women's projects. So, but when I mention ecosystem, I just meant like all builders, all chains, all DAOs, all protocols. It's like people are building. I see so many people building this very similar projects, and it's like, wait, is this really good use of energy resources, and is it very capitalist? We're all just in competition with each other now,
Mapping, if we take a geographical lens, like, mapping is, you can't see what you can't see, right? So the value of mapping, I think, has its place. The issue is this is a global network of an infinite number of participants and projects at any given moment, right? And so it is very, it's a labor intensive practice that is quickly outdated. And no amount of like databases that are well organized are going to like easily give you good maps, at least not in the way that we have things set up currently. But it's a huge problem to overcome, because if you don't know someone else is doing a project like yours, you can't, one question is, are you actually creating projects for the same market share? Like, we see lots of different phone companies, we see lots of different airlines, like we see, certain products. A proliferation of service providers isn't necessarily a problem because there's infinite need, right? Other kinds of products, you don't want a proliferation because the silos actually create alternative worlds. And in the Web3 space, like that potentially could lead to problems. So I think part of the ecosystem conversation has to be, how do we track what's being built? How do we lobby for effective like chains, if we're going to be chain agnostic, right? Like, how do we make sure various chains can work together, or that are providing specific needs for different blockchain applications? But this is like that meta level that people like us on this call are suited for, that the regular devs and founders don't give a shit about, because they just want to make money, right? So again, it comes back to like thinking about the internet as a public good first, and then thinking about all that. And if we can't even agree that the internet is a public good and should be governed like one, then the rest of it is a lot harder. We have a local radio show that had one of the internet, like basically the founders of the internet, Vincent somebody who now works for Google, on. And like, 2 minutes to the hour, I get my call in and I'm like, what do you think about blockchain? And he's like, oh, it's so scammy, these cryptocurrencies, blah, blah, blah. But I do support people learning how to code because it doesn't. And I was just like, this is the problem, right? Like, this is the problem, that we have big companies running the way we can interact with the internet right now. And we are trying to change that via building a new internet. But if we don't have thought leaders, like, who then have the ability to create consensus and change, it's challenging. And I do applaud the builders here and people who want to think about an ecosystem as like, who's the gardener, who's providing the water, where's the sunlight coming from, who are the ants, who are the worms, who are the butterflies, like who dandelions. Like, we really have to break it down, like we have to think like scientists, and we have to emulate like what ecosystems actually are thriving, right? We don't want to be rubber farmers in the Amazon destroying the planet's lungs, right? We want to actually emulate a thriving ecosystem, but we have to think about it like that. And so it's not just about, are we including this group or that group, but it's really like, you have to map appropriately. And that's where social geographers come into play, and why we need a multitude of disciplines participating actively.
That was really big. I mean, the other thing to say about ecosystems, like on that line, so Pete said he's thinking about the DAO space, right? And I know that Daniel Spring and RN DAO tried to do a mapping of all the DAO tooling. It's not possible. it's not possible. And Elizabeth and I are now working on a huge blueprint for the Singularity Net. And we're just trying to include a bunch of tools in there. So you're going to get a pretty good overview in there, in that document, but it's not a possible activity to do. It's too big. It's like, let's have a network of all businesses. And I think when we talk about ecosystems, we really need to understand what an ecosystem is. Like, we use that word as if it means something. In our context, which it doesn't. An ecosystem is a circular economy. And in the Web3 space, we are starting to have DPIN, which is at least a step in the direction of actually having a resource that we need, but we don't have electricity in our ecosystem. You know, we don't have the wireless networks. We're starting to. We don't have, I mean, we have almost 100% dependence on the electrical networks and the internet and the mobile phone systems that are not within our system. And then we talk about ecosystem, but we don't have one. Like, there are so many centralized organizations could shut us down tomorrow. So if you really want to talk about ecosystem, you have to start talking about, like, oh, where's the electricity coming from at a minimum? You know, and where the food is coming from. And I've talked about this too. Like, if you're printing magical internet money, it's great, but you're going to have to buy your food from somewhere. And if you're not building a farm, like, okay, it's good. We're going to at least have our electricity and our hardware and our storage. Like, we're at the point where we're starting to have storage, but who's building the chips, right? You, like, one of the first projects in the space was Kong Cash, Kong, and they built chips. But, you know, that's not, we haven't supported that in the network. But these guys are like the original DPIN guys. They're just so funny. They're funny guys. Like, they have like Kongland and Kong Cash, and they were printing actual passports with like a physical chip in them, because they really got to this thing. Like, if your chips are all being printed in some fab in China, like, there's somebody else's control of your hardware. Like, hello. It's that bad, because they came from the hardware industry and they realized that they had control of all these things, and they were like, "Oh, this is not good." So yeah, we're pretty. So yeah, I think Pete is right. We should plug local DAO summer, and I'm really excited about this summer. Community essentials, food, water systems, land management. I don't know what that has to do with DAOs, but presumably Pete does. Like, I don't know. I gave this talk on why people shouldn't lie to you, and we ended up talking about DAOs. So I think Pete can make anything about DAOs. Looking forward to the DAO summer. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We went down lots of rabbit holes, so thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Grace. Your workshops always are the best engagement, where we actually feel together and, you know, get to learn about ourselves and each other. And yeah, really appreciate it.
Thanks. I love talking, but it's good to listen to. 60, did you want to say something?
Oh, yes. I just wanted to ask if you've read the mom test. Someone recommended the book to me. I bought it recently, but I haven't read it yet, since I have quite the backlog. But yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, if you know about the book, and because some of the stuff you were mentioning about, sort of people lying to you, is sort of similar to what the book is about.
Pete said he had that in mind when he set this up, so he might have something to say about that. I just have experience as a mom. Do you want to say something, Pete? It's essential to read. Even for me, come on. What was the book that you mentioned, Elizabeth? Maybe just put that in the chat because people wanted to read that as well.
Yeah, Emergent Strategy. Pete put it in there.
Okay, great.
I read it. What's his name? the community currencies guy from Ithaca has also read it. So like a few people have read it. It's basically Scott Morris. That's right. Organizer out of Detroit, who is an artist and a community organizer, and really, really lovely way of presenting some of these concepts in a way that's accessible to sort of anybody, which is sort of the point.
Thanks. So now we all have homework too. 2 books to read. Go talk to 10 people. Yeah, definitely go talk to 10 people and be somebody people can say no to, be willing to hear real honest feedback. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.